All right, here we go. So today we are going to learn how to pin our sleeve into the armhole right here and sew our sleeve. And then we're also going to sew our neckband to prep it and attach it to the neck line here. And I'll show you guys how to hem your sleeve and hem your the bottom of your shirt as well. Hopefully we'll be able to actually do the hem. If we run out of time, I'll show you guys how to do it and you can do it on your own. All right. So many of you have already taken that summer top class with me, or even I know Raj, or gosh, some of the other gals who've been here since before COVID, I did a t-shirt class a few years ago. So it might be review. I already did one sleeve, so I'm gonna just show you guys with the other sleeve. A lot of times there'll be a specific front of the sleeve and the back of the sleeve. So remember, I had you guys notch the shoulder right here. So this is my sleeve. And this is the underarm seam right here. And then up here where we notched it is the shoulder. So the notch is this little seam right here. Normally, well, on this dress, there, I have a shoulder seam right here, and there's a little perpendicular line where the shoulder and the sleeve meet. So that's what we're notching right here. So what I was saying is that oftentimes, just so you know, there is an actual back of the sleeve, like this would be back and this would be front. So you would have to attach the back portion this way and the front portion this way. On these sleeves, there is no front and back, so we don't need to worry about that. In the case where you do have a front and back to your sleeve, you do need to make sure that you're attaching the right sleeve to the right armhole. So if you attach, you're not paying attention to front and back, you might put the back of the sleeve on this arm and the front over here on this arm. So, but we don't need to worry about that today because they're both the same. So you can just grab either one of your sleeves. Oh, did you guys prep the sleeves? Did you sew the underarm seam?
That's what I was wondering. I sewed one of them.
Okay. Melissa and Pauline, did you guys?
The underneath, I think.
So
yeah, we sewed that part.
Yeah, this is called the underarm seam.
Okay.
Okay, so if you've done, Maria, you have one done, so that's great. So you can start with one, but then before you do the other one, you have to sew this underarm seam.
And we pinked the edges as well, right?
Yes, I went ahead and I'm using my serger, but you guys can pink them.
Okay.
So I want to find, so obviously this is not my armhole. This bottom, this is the bottom. The armhole is this curvy, right? It's much bigger. You can see better, you can tell that's my armhole. This is not my armhole. This is just the hem, right? You can see the difference, how this is shaped like your shoulder. So we want to attach this side to our armhole, not this side. So I always start with my underarm seam and I grab my sleeve and I have my shirt inside out and I'm going to turn my sleeve right side out. So now it's right side out and I grab the underarm seam and I push my seam allowance to one side and I grab my armhole underarm seam. So here's my armhole. This is the underarm seam. And I match those two seams right on the line there the underarm seam on my sleeve, the underarm sleeve on my shirt. And then I switch the seam allowance. So the seam allowance on my shirt is going this way, and the seam allowance on my sleeve is going the other way. You don't want to have it like this, where they're both on top of each other. You're gonna have them one this way and one that way. You guys pinked your seam allowances, so your seams are open. You can open them. You don't, because my seams are closed, I have to do this technique. But since your seams are open, you can just open it up, open up the seam on each piece and have the seams open. It's important to always do that because you don't want to have bulkiness right there where the seams are attached. So I'm lining up my 2 lines, and then I'm going to put in a pin. And then I'm going to jump up to the top, and I'm going to line up my notch on my sleeve with my shoulder. Again, right sides together, always right sides together. And that shoulder seam, you guys, again, it'll be open because you pinked them. But if your seams are closed like mine, I need to push my seam to the back. So that's kind of a rule of thumb. You would always push your seam allowance to the back. This is the back, and this is the front. So that's what I'm going to do. But you guys just need to open it. And I'm pinning it there. So now I have those 2 pieces pinned, and now I can just pin the rest of my sleeve. So I have it like this, and then I just gently work my way around. And I match up the edges, these raw edges like this, perfectly, right sides together, and pin all the way around. I use a lot of pins because my fabric's a little bit slippery and drapey, but also just because the armhole, because it's curved, it's a little bit harder to sew. So the more pins you have, the easier it'll be to keep everything together. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, great. So if you end up having, you know, a little extra, I already pinned one of the sleeves in, and it pinned in fine. This one is, the sleeve's a little bit bigger than the armhole, but not too much. So I'm able to just kind of work it in by stretching the armhole out a little and readjusting my pins. If it's a lot different, let me know, and we'll talk about what you can do to resolve that issue. But everything should be matching up nice and nicely. I've already sewn this pattern once. I showed you guys the sample last week, so I know the pattern works pretty well. And I've taught it in other classes too, so I've seen it. So the only thing in this pattern that's a little funky is the neckband, but we'll talk about that when we get there. So that's like another tip for you guys if you start to branch out and buy patterns in the store or online. Just, you know, the first time you sew it, you never know really how it's going to turn out. If it's going to fit right, or if everything's going to match up right. So once you've tested the pattern a few times, then you know it's a good pattern. So for some reason, my sleeve came out quite a bit bigger. I have a lot of extra. I don't know if that's because I stretched it on accident, maybe when I was ironing it. That's really strange. So I'm going to actually I'm going to take it in, I think, because it's kind of more than I can spread out. So if that does happen to you and it's more than you can spread out, you can just take the sleeve off and take in the underarm seam a little bit more. I'm gonna try to make it work. It looks like I'm able to make it work. So with knits, it's more forgiving than with wovens. I think it's because I was pinning too close to the edge. So I think I've got that worked in. So yeah, I'm okay. So have you guys started pinning? Or are you just watching?
Yeah, I started pinning.
Okay, let me know how it goes. So Maria, you took the summer top class, right? And
Yes.
Melissa and Pauline, did you guys take the summer top class? The spring top, summer, I think it was summer top. Yeah. Melissa?
Yes, we were in that class.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. You can ignore my question then. So you guys have sewn a sleeve in before. So this is going to be the same thing. It's just a knit fabric, but everything that I do on the sewing machine is the same. I'm going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm done pinning. I'm ready to sew. 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm going to use my knit setting, that knit stitch setting. Make sure if you've been using your sewing machine that you've reset it to the stretch knit setting, and you have the right stitch length and matching thread. And I always sew the inside of a circle. So this is a circle. So that means this is the inside of the circle right here. So when I put it into the sewing machine, I'm going to put my needle here. I always start at the underarm seam. I start either a little behind it or a little in front of it. I don't want to start right on that seam because sometimes your sewing machine gets a little jammed up on such a thick portion there when it's starting off. So I'll probably start here and then I start sewing all the way around, but it's always on the inside. You don't want to put your sleeve down like this, where you're sewing the top of the shoulder. You can't, it's easier to sew the inside like that. So I'm gonna go over to my machine. Do you guys need me to put my camera at the machine? Or is this okay doing a distance shot? Either way, let me know.
I think it's okay. I'm not sure about the others.
Melissa's okay? Was that Melissa or Maria? Oh,
That was Maria.
oh, Maria. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll move my camera just for this one sleeve, okay? Just because it's a little bit on the trickier side. Okay, so I'm ready to go with my settings. And again, half-inch seam allowance and inside of the armhole. The trick is kind of to keep moving your circle around and turning the arm and just making sure that your fabric's as flat as possible. You don't want it all bunching up and pulling. It'll start causing you to, your needle will start pulling off. It won't be a nice half-inch seam allowance. I'm checking to make sure that my raw edges are matching because they really tend to move quite a bit. I don't know about your fabric, but mine is moving. So remember, you don't really need to back stitch on with a stretch stitch. You just want to do like one little stitch, you can. Just turning off my threads. So I think it looks good. Taking a look. So my fabric did slip a little bit, not too much. Stayed on track pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with it. Turn it out the right side as well and take a look at it. Make sure there's no puckers and that hopefully your seams are matching right there, and not a lot of puckers. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to turn it back inside out. And now we're going to clip into the seam allowance so that we can iron it. So I'm going to go ahead and move the camera back. So you take your scissors and you always want, when you have a curve, you want to clip the seam allowance. So I've laid it out like this so that just my seam allowance is laying on the table, because I don't want to cut into the body of my shirt, and I'm going to just snip just like a 1/4 inch, you know, half of the way in. Obviously I'm not going to cut through where I stitched. I want to stop about 1/4 inch away from where I stitched. This is gonna, and I'm doing these little snippets about 1 inch, 1.5 inches apart. And this is what's going to allow us to press the seam open. So I know it's a knit and it doesn't really seem necessary to press it open, but it does make a difference. If you were in a big hurry, you could cut corners and not press your seams open, but I'm kind of a stickler for that. So now I have my seam allowance snipped, and I can go over to the ironing board. And I'm going to use my sleeve edge here. It just makes it easier for me to show you how to do this. I like to start at the underarm. And just open up my seam. Now they're going to pop right open. If you don't clip them, they're just going to pull and stretch. You won't be able to get them to lay flat. So we want them to lay flat so we can iron them. Got cold. So since this is kind of a delicate jersey knit, I don't want to like go crazy and press the iron really hard because it's going to leave a mark. So I'm just going to lightly dab the seam open so it'll lay better. So you guys, if you haven't already started ironing your seam open, I pink it first, because see, this is where you can kind of change the routine around depending on how you're finishing the seam. Since you guys are pinking, it's probably easier to pink your seam first. And if you've already done your snip, you can still paint, but just don't, you only want to paint just the smallest edge off. Otherwise, you're going to have to do the snips again. If you haven't painted it yet, done these snips yet, I would do the pinking first and then do the snips.
Amy, I had to log back in. What do you mean by the snips?
Oh, did you miss the part where I was snipping the
Yeah.
allowance? Okay.
Sorry.
Show you. Let me just finish ironing this open. So again, you guys, I don't want to make you iron and then paint because then you'll have to iron the seams back together. So I just wanted to say that. So Maria, what you have to do is right after you sew your
Yeah.
seam, go ahead and pink it.
Okay.
That's what I would recommend. Pink it. And then after you pink it, and when you're pinking it, you're just barely taking off the edge, right?
Right.
You're not going to take off a 1/4 inch or anything. You're just snipping off this edge,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
after you pink it, then you need to snip it
Oh, okay.
like this.
Okay. So that
all-
it'll move.
So when you
Okay.
press the seam open, it'll lay flat.
I got it. Okay. Oh, I'm glad I asked.
So it looks like this all the way around, and you won't be able to press the seam open unless you do that.
Okay.
It releases the fabric so that it'll lay flat.
Got it.
All right. So is that clear for you guys? I know you guys are finishing your seams with the pinking, and it, depending on how you're finishing your seams, sometimes the steps change. I'm going to go ahead and serge this closed on my serger. If you're using the serger, then you can just do that at the very end like I'm doing. Okay, so there's my sleeve. Round. Okay, so there, I've got one sleeve in. Pretty good. I still have one more to do, so I'm going to do it again. Just so you guys know, they are working on opening up the makerspace just for people to use it, not for classes yet. We might start classes at the beginning of next year, so maybe in January. But right now they're trying to get the makerspace open so that people can come in and reserve a time and use the serger or the art supplies. So yeah. So you guys, ESIS wanted to make it available for you guys. So if you want to go in and use the sewing machines or the serger for this class, you can. So maybe next, I think she said next month. She's trying to get it open. I think you'll have to like sign up or reserve a time, something like that. So I'll try to keep you guys posted or keep your eye out for that.
Right. If Amy, I haven't used the serger at all. Will someone be there to assist or?
Yeah,
Just-
there's always someone there. They never let you be there alone, at least before COVID. So I'm assuming it's the same protocol. And yeah, there's always someone there. There's supposed to be someone who I was in charge of training anyone who, or Renya would train anyone so that they could at least show people how to start the machine, how to thread the machine, how to get going on it. So that was our protocol in the past. So I'm assuming there will be someone who can at least show you how to get on and get going. Good question. So if the serger is already threaded and ready to go, all you have to do is turn it on, push the button, and then it operates just like a regular sewing machine with the pedal.
Yeah.
But you might not, you'll have to look at the presser foot. The foot's a little different. There's 4 needles. So, but it's the same way. It's just a little faster, a little noisier,
Mhm.
and it's cutting the edge of your fabric off. So you just want to be careful that you're not cutting off too much of the fabric.
Right.
And you don't have to lift the presser foot up and down. A lot of people
Oh.
make that mistake. They lift the foot up and then someone goes to use it and the foot's up and it messes up their work. So just, you only need to lift the presser foot if it's like a super thick fabric or something like that. Usually you just start sewing right away.
And so let's say I'm gonna serge this. I have to snip it first and then serge.
Yeah, the snip, I snip it because I want to iron my seam open. That's the whole
Right.
purpose.
Okay.
I want to open the seam and get it nice, and it makes a difference. If you were to sew one sleeve and not iron the seam open and another iron, you'd see how much nicer it lays when it's pressed.
Got it.
So that's important. And then after I press my seam open, then I serge it closed, because once the seam is closed, I can't press it open.
Right. Okay.
So you can serge the seams open. So that would mean you'd have to serge one seam
Right.
and then go around again and serge the other seam.
Right.
But that's obviously, you only really want to do that on like a high end. You would have to have a purpose for that. Usually there's a zipper going in, and so you need
Yeah.
the seam open, or you want to be able to alter the garment. That you usually have a reason. Most of the time, everyone serges the seams closed nowadays because it's faster, it's more, saves money.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna. Does anyone have any more questions? I'm gonna go ahead and sew my other armhole in. Are you guys sewing too?
Yes.
All right. All right. Okay, so I finished sewing in my sleeve, and now I'm going to do the same steps. So you guys would pink it at this point, lay it down and pink, and then snip. But I'm gonna finish my seams with the serger, so I'm gonna snip now. Can't believe I'm calling it snip. There's probably another word for it, but I lost it somewhere along the way. It's called clipping the seams. C-L-I-P-P-I-N-G, clipping. But I like snip better. So you can see my fabric slipped a little here and my edges aren't matching, but I'm not gonna worry about it. A little oopsie there, that's okay. It's important when you're clipping the seams that you lay your fabric on the table like this. It'll be so much safer. If you try holding it up in the air and clipping, you might end up getting your actual t-shirt, putting a hole in it. Same with pinking. I would pink like this too with it laying flat. All right, so now I'm going to iron. I think it's just easier to start at the underarm when I'm pressing my seams open. Usually that's where I always start, but I was trying to start at the shoulder. And it's just so much easier to start here at the underarm. Seams pop open better. And then I just start working my way around. So I am a little nervous about the neckline because, you know, it's a knit and it stretches. And now that I've been putting in my sleeves, I've been messing with my neckline, pulling it a lot, you know. So sometimes that stretches it out. Sometimes you might see in the directions reading on patterns, they might tell you to put the collar in, the neckband in first. So that is an option if you find out that your neckband, your neckline is getting a little stretched out. Do the neckband first and then put in your sleeve. Or you can put like a little stay stitch around the edge of your neckband with your sewing machine, just a regular little straight stitch all the way around, and that'll kind of help it so that it doesn't stretch while you're sewing in your sleeves and working with your shirt. That's just a little side tip. You didn't have to do that today, but it's just a little side tip. I'm going to go to the serger now and finish this edge, and then I'll show you how to get started on that neckband. So Maria, I did lift the presser foot on my serger right now. Because I'm sewing a circle, the armhole is a circle. So
Okay.
I had to lift the foot to get into that angle. But normally when you're just sewing in a straight line, you don't need to lift the presser foot. You just slide your fabric right in, push on the pedal.
Okay.
Hey. So on the neckband, show you this first. Let's turn it right side out. At this point, I would definitely turn it on. Try it on. I've already tried it on a few times, so I don't need to. But you guys should definitely try it on. In fact, I recommend trying it on through all the stages of making it. You can try it on after you sew the shoulders and the side seams, and then try it on again when you pin in the sleeves, you know, and just checking it, see how you like it, if there's anything you want to change. If you're not worried about the fit or the length or any of that, then you don't need to try it on. But if you're, you know, you want to see how it looks and how things are fitting, trying it on, the more the better. After I wore that shirt last week, I decided that I wish I had made a small, because it's actually, the medium is pretty big.
Uh-huh.
But I already cut out a small. So I already cut out a medium. So I have another medium right here. But, you know, then if it's big, you can always goof around with it. If it's too small, there's nothing much you can do. So anyway, neckband time. First, before I go to the next step, do you guys have any questions? Does anyone need me to slow down or show you anything again or go over anything again? Okay. So with this little neckband here that you guys cut out, I have found, I've sewn it a couple of times. The neckband isn't necessarily the right size for the neckline. So this is the neckline. This is the neckband. So first we're gonna pin first. I want you to pin it. I already pinned mine and my neckband was too long. So this is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I actually need like an inch seam allowance. So I had quite a bit extra. So what you're gonna do is pin, like I did here, a 1/2 inch seam allowance, right sides together. Because before you sew the neckband to the neckline, you have to prep it, just like we prepped our sleeves and we sewed the underarm seam. You have to prep the neckband. And so you would sew these two edges together. So take it apart. I already know I need to take it in another inch So you have this big long piece, you want to fold it right sides together, and you're going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Not sew, I just want you to pin it right now.
Okay.
And pin it in a straight line so that you can lay it into your shirt more easily. I usually pin at an angle. Maybe you already pin on it. Maybe that's not a problem for you. You already pin in a straight line, but so I pinned it in a straight line like that. That way I can lay it into the shirt better.
Okay.
So, and then you're going to open the seam up like this, and you're going to just start pinning. So right sides together. So I'm going to have the right side of my neckband, and then I'm going to turn my shirt inside out. I had it right side out. And I'm going to place the right side of my neckband seam at the center back. So the center back is the, so here's my back neckline and my front neckline. The center back is the center right back here. So I'm gonna place the right side of my neckband against my center back. I'm kind of just eyeballing the center back. And then I'm gonna pin it a 1/2 inch in from the top, from this raw edge. And I'm gonna start pinning all the way around, working around, and we'll see how well it actually fits. Hopefully it's not too small. If the neckband is too small, then you have to cut another neckband. If it's too big, that's not a big deal. You can just take it in a little bit, like I had to do with mine. Again, I don't know why the neckband's not coming out correctly on the pattern. It could just be an error in the pattern. I don't think we've done anything wrong. So if it fits perfectly, then that's awesome. You still need to unpin the neckband and go back and sew that little seam on your neckband. Then you'll have to pin it again. So I know this is an extra step. It's kind of tedious, but it's a total bummer if your neckband doesn't fit. And you've already started sewing it in. That is a big bummer. Better to be safe than sorry. You can even just like, once it's pinned this much, already pinned most of it, you can kind of, I can see right now, I don't even have to finish pinning. It's fitting fine. So you don't even have, if you're like this far or even not, or even just a couple pins less, and you can see that it's fitting like that, you don't have to finish pinning. So we just want to do that little safety check. Make sure everything's good. So I just took mine apart, and now I'm going to go to my machine and I'm going to sew this stitch line here on my neckband. And then I'm going to, if your neckband is, well, I'll tell you, you guys let me know if it's fitting or not, and I'll tell you how to proceed. For me, I'm going to go ahead and sew, and then I'm going to serge off the extra here.
Amy,
Yeah.
mine is short. It's interesting.
Is it?
Yeah.
How much?
A lot.
A lot?
I like about an inch. So I can't even borrow from the seam.
But you have the same size as me, and
I know
use the same pattern. That's so weird.
You know what's interesting when you put up your shirt, your neckline, your neck hole looks bigger than mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah. You want to see mine?
Yeah.
Hang on, let me turn on my video. It looks, yours looks deeper or bigger. Mine looks,
Your neck hole looks good.
oh, it looks
Mine
good.
maybe looks bigger just because it got stretched out because I've been
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
messing with it.
Yeah, I
Um,
thought like yours looked bigger, but then yeah, my my neck thing is shorter, a lot shorter. So
okay,
I'll
hold up
cut.
your shirt again like this. Let me take another look. Okay, it looks okay. Now, so how much shorter is your neckband? That's really important, you guys. Make sure when you,
It was about, I took it out already. It was about you know, like about an inch.
an inch
About an
too
inch.
short.
Yeah.
So do we need to add an inch plus seam allowance or just an inch?
I think an inch plus seam allowance.
Plus, are you, okay, because
So maybe I should look, maybe I'll pin it again just to make sure. I took out the pins already because I'm like, oh, this is too short.
I want to go get the pattern and look and see what happened, but I'm not going to waste time digging out the
Right.
pattern. So
Okay, no
do you
problem.
have extra fabric?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're just going to take that pattern piece, that
Uh-huh.
little rectangular piece,
Yes.
and pin it on the fabric, just like you did when you cut the fabric out before. But you're
Right.
going to use your ruler and just add, depending if you need an inch and a half or an inch, you'll add that and mark with the chalk
Uh-huh.
and then recut it.
Okay. Got it. I'll measure it. I'll repin this.
Yeah, I know it's a pain in the butt to repin it, but it's important because you don't want to go through this again.
Right.
The neckline is so tricky. They're
Okay.
all tricky.
Okay.
Melissa and Pauline, how is your neckline turning out?
I think our neckline is really short too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because at first, I almost thought that it would only go in the front.
So while you're pinning it, estimate how much shorter it is. And then we need to add seam allowance too, right? So
I'm thinking almost like we need to add like 2 or 3 inches.
you can take your measuring tape, because I know it's kind of hard to measure when it's too short. How do you measure that? Because you've got a circle and a circle.
Yeah.
So maybe take the measuring tape and so if you pinned it all the way around to here and you don't have enough space, you don't have enough to pin, you pinned it to here and it started here and you don't have enough to pin this distance, use your measuring tape to figure out what that distance is. Like that, because your measuring tape will bend like this, see? So you can lay your measuring tape in to figure out what that distance is that you need. And then you're just gonna add an inch for seam allowance.
Okay, we'll do that.
So figure out the distance you need and then add 1 inch for seam allowance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but you need to take your pattern, right? So you guys have this rectangular shape neckband pattern. And,
Yes.
and lay it on your fabric, against the fold line. And then you'll just take your ruler And depending what it is you need to add, say it's 2 inches, you'll just mark with your chalk, the 2-inch line here. So you've added whatever it is, and you can just mark with chalk. You don't, and then on here, you can just make a note to yourself. I write on the pattern, a little note, say add, I put it right here on the edge and I say plus 2 inches and I put an arrow. And then that tells me that I need to add 2 inches when I'm cutting it out the next time. So I think I know what happened because when I made my sample, my neckline was too small too. And then when I cut out all your other sizes, I guess it's a flaw in the pattern all the way through. But I don't know why Maria's is too small because I used I thought I used the adjusted pattern. Okay. Well, now you guys know how to make adjustments on a pattern. So while you guys are doing that, I'm gonna just go ahead and prep my neckband, and then I'll come back and we'll wait until you guys, I'll wait until you guys are done cutting, okay?
Amy, I'm so sorry. My internet cut out again. So how much seam allowance do we add after we measure what's short?
Yeah, so after you measure what's short, you want to add an inch.
An inch?
Because remember,
Okay.
our seam allowance is a 1/2 inch. So
Right.
you need to have a 1/2 inch on both sides.
Okay.
So add
Great.
1 inch, add 1 inch.
Okay. Wonderful.
So I even just double checked again on mine before I cut off my extra. It's just always good to double check that it's fitting. This circle is fitting this circle. So let me know when you guys have your new neckband cut out.
Yeah, I just got mine cut out. So should I do the same process again or
Yes.
to make sure?
Yeah, I would pin it to the two ends together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Good question. And pin it again and just make sure it's fitting this time.
Okay.
How's it looking, Maria?
Oh, yeah, it's working. It fits.
Oh, great. Hooray. Yay.
So then I do the seam.
Yeah.
I unpin it and then do the seam.
Yes. Unpin
First.
it and then you're going to sew your 1/2 inch seam allowance. I already trimmed mine.
Okay.
Don't, this isn't, don't look at this
Right.
for a guide, but you'll sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance right sides together.
Okay.
Okay.
And then do I pink it?
No, you don't need to pink it. So you'll
Okay.
go ahead and press it open. Mine's pressed open and
Okay.
you'll trim it down to a 1/4 inch like this.
Got it. Okay.
Are you good, Maria?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. So then the next step, so you have a piece like this, right?
Right.
And then you have your shirt. So you want to lay your shirt out like this, inside out.
Okay.
And then you take the neckband, and similar to what we did with the armhole and the sleeve, you're gonna take your neckband, right sides, take the right side and place it on the right side of your shirt here
Okay.
at the center back. I like to have the seam at the center back. I'm gonna put a little label in there,
Okay.
but you don't have to. So I'm just eyeballing my center back, and then I'm gonna pin it. And I'm gonna pin all the way around, just like you did when you were testing it out,
Okay.
the fit. So there's a lot of different ways to make a neckband and finish this neckline. I like doing this way because it's kind of a habit. I know how to do it, and it's just like using the bias tape. I'm kind of doing the same thing that we did on our summer top, but we're making it with our own neckband instead of bias tape. So if we had a fancy sewing machine like they do in the factory, we could put, a professional neckband on like they do in the store. But since we're using home machines, we kind of have to make do with our own tweak on it.
Right. Amy, I'm just curious on this fabric. Could you have used a bias tape as well, or no? Because it's a different.
I've never used bias tape on a knit. That could be interesting. I would only want to use it somewhere where I didn't want it to stretch.
Right.
Right. And then I'd have to have some sort of opening.
Yeah.
But that could be cool, actually. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done that. Oh, you know what I have? I've used bias tape on like chunky knits. I have a bunch of these chunky knit fabrics on a bolt that I was
Right.
using. I was making like a cardigan sweater and other things.
Uh-huh.
And I think I have used the bias tape, and it was like to finish the hem on a sleeve, like a wide sleeve.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. This way it doesn't. Okay.
That way you could get your hand through it,
Yeah.
So I finished pinning all the way around, and
Okay.
now I'm going to go to the sewing machine. So right here, my seam on my shoulder, it didn't like match up perfectly when I sewed my neckline, and it's a little off. If you guys have one of those, you can just leave it, but it's bothering me, so I'm just going to trim it a little bit. Yeah, so after you finish pinning, then you can go to the sewing machine and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around. Just
And
like
where do you start? At the shoulder or in the back?
start at your seam line right here, this little seam line.
Oh, the seam line. Okay, got it.
Yeah, start at center back. I would start a little behind it or a little in front of it.
Okay.
Probably better to start behind it because it's always better to start on a straight path. See how this is like a straightaway right here?
Right.
Then starting on a curve about over here. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back and I'll give you guys the next step.
Okay.
Okay, you guys, so I'm back. I finished sewing it on. And phew, necklines are always tricky, I think. And knits are too. So congratulations if you got through that without any puckering or bubbling. So we're gonna clip into the seam allowance. Because now after we clip it, we're going to iron it open. And then I'll show you the next step after that. So clipping into the seam allowance, just like we did the sleeves, the armhole. And you don't need to pink or finish this edge, so don't worry about that. You're just doing the clipping, and then you're going to press the seam open. There. So I finished clipping all the way around, and now I'm going to take it to the ironing board and iron that seam open. So if you feel like your fabric and the seam is kind of bulky, you can trim the seam allowance down at this point. Trim it down to 1/4 inch. I'm gonna leave mine. I mean, only if you feel like it's super bulky. I don't know what kind of fabric you guys have. Because when you leave it in, it kind of gives you this extra, what we're gonna do is we're creating the effect of the bias tape. So if you remember with bias tape, we sewed it on and then it had the pre-folded edges and it folded and then you fold it over the edge like that. So we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it with our neckband pattern here piece. So you might wanna, you're gonna open up. So after you've pressed that seam open, you're gonna open this neckband up like this and fold it 1/2 inch and then fold it down over the back. So this is the inside out. Make sure it's inside out of the shirt. And just see how that looks and pin it and see how thick it is. depending on your fabric, how that feels. So I'm kind of checking out mine. I fold this over a 1/2 inch and then fold it onto that seam allowance. I want to fold it over, I want it to cover my stitch line. So see that stitch line there? I want this to cover that stitch line and hide it. And I'm going to add my logo label here to stick it in there. So this is the center back. So if you wanted to trim this down to a 1/4 inch, pushing the seam allowance up so that it gets hidden on top. You could make your neckband narrower, but I'm happy with it just like this with mine, and my fabric's pretty thin, so I'm not going to trim anything. So before I go on, I just want to see where are you, Maria? Are you good?
Yes, I'm good. I just need to press it open and then fold it and fold it, do the next step.
Yeah. So I don't even think I'm gonna use my iron at this point. You could. I think I'm just gonna use my fingers because my fabric is minding so well. So
Okay.
what you're gonna, the next step after you sew it on is you're pushing that seam allowance. I'm working on the inside out. And I'm pushing the seam allowance up. And
Okay,
then you're gonna fold your neckband down a 1/2 inch.
right.
Fold it over. Okay, you got it. Right on top of that seam line.
Okay.
So I am at the ironing board now because I am gonna iron that neckband down a 1/2 inch, just to make it a little bit easier. And I know that I don't want it to look sloppy, my neckline, so I'm kind of getting random. So having it ironed is just gonna help ensure that I'm folding it correctly all the way around. So I have it pinned and I'm gonna just turn it right side out because I want to look at it, see how I like it. So I think it's looking okay. That you want to have this little neckband that's about the same width all the way around. I mean, that's the goal, to have it even. On the outside, on the front side. On the inside, I don't care so much if it's messy, but on the right side, I want it to look good.
Hi, Amy.
Hey, Raj, how you doing?
Good. I need to go. So when I will finish, I will send you the picture.
Okay, thank you so much. I love
Thank
the
you.
photos.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so I finished pinning and now I'm gonna go, so it looks like this. I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I wish, okay, I did try sewing right side up because I prefer sewing right side up so that my the top stitch is nicer than than the bottom stitch on the machine. But I'm not going to tell you guys to do that because what happens is that you end up missing, you won't catch this piece under here and we need to catch this piece so it stays down. So we're going to sew it wrong side up.
And Amy, at this point, do you do just a straight stitch and not the stretch stitch?
No, you definitely use the stretch stitch. Yep.
Okay, you still do the stretch. Okay,
Yep,
got
you
it.
still, yep. Good question. You still use the stretch stitch. So I'm going to sew right here on the wrong side of my fabric. I'm going to start just beyond the center back, like probably right here. And I'm going to stitch right on this fold line. And I'm going to go all the way around the neckline. So I'm stitching right on the fold right here where my pins are, all the way around. And it's going to leave a little top stitch. Hopefully the top stitch will be right here. That's where we want it to be. But make sure you use matching thread. If you use a contrast thread, it's not going to look good. Because, you know, there's going to be little, unless you're like the perfect sewer or something, but I totally recommend matching thread. That way it'll look nice on your neckline. Any questions about that? Okay, I'm gonna go to my machine and sew this line. We're almost done. Once this line is done, and again, Maria asked, do I switch to my regular straight stitch? No, you stay with your stretch stitch. After we're done sewing this, all that's left are the hems. And the hems are really easy. You guys, I have two options. And after I sew this, I'll tell you the two options that you have. Okay, so I finished sewing. It's not exactly, I'm glad my thread is matching because it's not exactly perfect, but it looks all right. I was even thinking of doing something decorative, like doing another stitch, like a zigzag stitch across around. Like my stretch stitch is a zigzag stitch, and I can adjust the width. So like I was thinking of like doing like a wide stitch just to kind of detract from where my stitches weren't exactly straight, but it's okay. It looks all right. So on the back, it's a little more funky. I'm curious to see how you guys do with yours. I'm glad it's on the back. If it's funky, the front looks better. The reason why you want to use the stretch stitch is because you want your neckline to stretch, right? So you can get it over your head. If you use the straight stitch, it won't stretch so much. I'm gonna give mine a little press right now just to straighten it out, make it flat. Okay, so this is how it came out. So it's looking pretty good. This is how yours should look, something like this, maybe even a little better if you guys. So if we were stitching from right side up, we would have a better stitch line along here. I just wanted to be on the safe side. And the problem with that is sometimes you end up missing, catching this to hold it down on the other side. So, but on your own, if you want to try sewing it that way and just and pin it more meticulously, or maybe come up with your own way of rigging that, you can. So that's our neckline. Now I'm going to show you how you can finish the hem. So obviously you can serge the edge and then fold it up a 1/2 inch and then go to your sewing machine and stretch stitch it down. You guys don't have a serger. So instead of serging the edge, I would have you pink the edge, fold it a 1/2 inch up, and then go to your sewing machine and stitch it down from the inside. But I'm gonna stop for a second and see where Maria is, and Melissa and Pauline. How are you guys coming with your neckline?
I'm still sewing my neckline. 'Cause
Okay,
I
I'll wait for you to finish.
because I found a little like I caught the fabric, so I had to unhook it just a tiny bit, so I had a little fold, a little tuck. So now I'm just finishing the neckline.
I'll wait another minute. Melissa and Pauline, are you guys there?
For us, it took us a little while to cut the piece again, so we just decided like, oh, we'll do this part later. yeah, so we're just gonna watch the rest and then do it slowly with the video since it's the neckline seemed just a lot more complicated. So we're like, we better take our time with this. So
It is.
that's where
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You don't want to rush. You don't want to be in a rush. Like if you've been sewing for a couple hours and you're tired, like don't push out the neckline, or don't, like, you made a good judgment call because you definitely want to be going slow and taking your time. And I know I was telling you, you could skip the iron step where you fold the neckline a half inch and then fold it again. I wouldn't skip that step. Go ahead and fold it a half inch, iron it, and fold it again and iron it, and pin it really well. It depends on your fabric. Like my fabric is probably completely different from the fabric that you have, and everyone's knit is a little different. Some are a little thicker, or have more cotton in them, or So yeah, I'm glad you're taking your time. Okay, so first, I want to give Maria a little time to finish her neckline.
Sorry.
I'll explain it again, Maria. So the first
Okay.
hem choice option is pinking, and same thing for your bottom. So what goes for your sleeve, same thing for the bottom. So you can pink it and then fold it a half inch and then stitch it from the inside, the wrong side. Just stitch right along the edge where you pinked it all the way around. And then you'll have a little stitch line here. It's a half inch folded hem. Or you could do this, that's the easier one. A more complicated one would be folding. There's no pinking involved. You fold it a 1/4 inch and then fold another 1/4 inch. And then stitch on top of that fold. So it's called a baby hem. Fold a 1/4 and fold another 1/4, and then you stitch on this little fold edge right here, and that gives you a stitch line right on the edge of the sleeve, versus the other one is going to give you a stitch line a half inch up. I prefer the half inch folded hem. I love the baby hem, but for this particular treatment on the sleeve, I don't like it. So I'm going to do that folded, half inch folded on my sleeves. For the bottom, same thing. You could change it up and do the baby hem on the bottom if you wanted. If you like that look with the tiny hem and the little stitch here. I'm going to do the folded, the half inch folded again on the bottom as well. I like the flatness of it, and I like the stitch showing a half inch top stitch right there, and it just looks kind of sporty to me. So that's what I'm going to do right now, and it's up to you guys. So since I'm not pinking, I'm just going to go ahead and serge the end, and I'll be right back. So with the 1/2 inch folded hem, you serge or pink the edge, and then you fold it up a 1/2 inch to the inside and pin it. I'm gonna iron as well. It's really helpful to iron it up first. Or you can iron and pin at the same time. So I ironed it and pinned it a 1/2 inch up. And now I'm just going to stitch on the inside, right here, right along the edge, about a little less than 1/4 inch from the raw edge. You guys will have a pinked edge. So like a little less than 1/4 inch. Like an 1/8 inch from that pinked edge, probably be good. I'm gonna go to the sewing machine. We're almost done. I'm gonna sew this, and when I come back, I'll see where Maria is. Are you still doing your your neckband?
I'm ironing right now,
Okay, I'll let you do
So-
that.
catching up to you.
So I finished sewing the sleeve and I'm gonna iron it now just to get all this wrinkliness out. So the hem is finished and I pressed it and it took some of that bubbliness out. So it's laying much flatter now. So it should look like that. This is that 1/2 inch folded hem. So it's flat and you have that stitch line right there. So we're out of time. So I just want to see where Maria is. I can stay longer.
I'm hemming the hem of the shirt, the bottom part. I didn't do the sleeve.
You
So
finished the neckline?
I finished the neckline, yes, and I'm hemming my shirt
The bottom first?
bottom part. Yeah,
Okay. Which hem are you doing? That
I
1/2
did. Yeah, the 1/2 inch, the pinking. I pinked it and then did 1/2 inch
Awesome.
up.
How did
Yeah.
your neckline turn out?
It's okay. My shirt is white, mostly white, so it's okay. It's doesn't look too bad since it's a white thread.
Can I see?
Hang on. I'm on my phone. Here.
I'm going to
It's-
turn my air conditioning off because it's hard for me to hear.
Sure. I don't know if you can see. Let me put it closer. It's tethered on my sewing machine. So it's right here.
And what is on the print? What is it?
Oh, it's like a fun little like watermelon.
Oh, cute. And
It was
how-
a Joanne's and I wanted to do a non-directional fabric.
yeah.
So it's just kind of
How
fun.
how stretchy is it? Is it?
It's a jersey knit.
Oh, it is. Okay. So
Yeah.
it's fairly stretchy and nice.
It's kind of nice and soft.
Did you iron your neckline?
Not yet. I kind of went in straight into pinking the hem so I can catch up to you. I
Yeah.
haven't ironed it down yet.
Yeah. When you iron it, it'll lay out more and you'll like it better and it'll be more attractive and everything.
Right. Yeah.
Yay.
But yeah, not bad.
Okay. Well, does anyone have questions? Melissa and Pauline? Maria, do you have any final questions?
Actually, yes. If you have I have this jersey knit, but it's striped fabric, so I avoided it because of how I wasn't sure how to cut the sleeves like to match. Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah, you thought you might use it for this.
Yeah, but I
Um,
ended up not.
so I would just, when you're laying out your front and your back, so I was able to lay, so if this is your fabric and this is the fold of the fabric right here,
Mhm.
then you could lay, so, front and
Right.
back. Well, you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And then the sleeve, this particular sleeve is on the fold too. So
Right.
you could just put the sleeve, you know, here right
Okay,
below
cool.
it. And then you
Yeah.
know that all these stripes are,
They will all match.
yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, so when up here, yeah, it'll be fine once it comes up here and drapes out. Yeah, that's what I would do.
Okay.
Any other questions, you guys? Well, I hope you enjoyed it. I know it's a little tricky. I hope you'll wear. You think you'll wear it?
Yeah, I think so.
Even as a pajama shirt or something with your pajama shorts. I mean, I'm not even, is this gonna fit over my head? Yeah, it fits. So it fits. Okay. Yeah, and maybe you'll wear it out. Who knows? So I guess I can't wait to try it on because it's maybe it'll fit me better than I'm thinking. All right, everyone. I'll send you the video by tomorrow, and if you don't mind filling out the feedback form, I'd really appreciate that.